So let's start with the brain and how it contributes to muscle memory. And we're going to focus on two areas of the brain. One is this area.
I love bringing this information to y'all too, by the way, just in case y'all didn't know.
Here, referred to as the motor cortex. And the second is my favorite structure of the brain, and that is the cerebellum. I mean, just look at how beautifully amazing this structure is. And if I show you the other half of the brain, and you look at the medial or the inside surface of the cerebellum, it's equally as beautiful. And this area that kind of looks like branches of a tree is called the arbor vitae, which actually refers to the tree of life. But we'll come back to the cerebellum in just a second. And again, this fold is the motor cortex. And a fold of the brain is just referred to as a gyrus. And admittedly, when I was a student and first looked at the brain, I was like, how do you know what the motor cortex is? There's folds everywhere. Well, if you look closely, you can see this crack or groove going from the top all the way down to the temporal lobe. And this prominent groove on the lateral side of the brain is called the central sulcus. And just in front of this groove is that motor cortex. Now, when you decide to engage a muscle, maybe you're going to start walking, ride a bike, or lift a weight. That signal will come from the motor cortex, travel down the spinal cord, and eventually down to a skeletal muscle, causing it to contract. But before that signal makes it down to the spinal cord and to the muscle, the cerebellum has a few things to say about this. One of the main functions of the cerebellum is to evaluate how well movements initiated by that motor cortex are being carried out. When these movements are not being carried out correctly, the cerebellum detects this and any discrepancies, and then sends an inhibitory signal back to the motor cortex to help correct any errors in those skeletal muscle contractions. Essentially, we need all the muscles involved in the movement to contract and relax at the appropriate times. And so the cerebellum smooths the movements and allows you to complete coordinated and complex sequences of skeletal muscle contractions. But what's interesting about this is that the cerebellum didn't know how to do this just from the beginning. It learned how to do this through repetition. Now, all of us tend to learn very similar movements. We all learn to walk, we all learn to talk, we learn to write. But not all of us learn how to play the piano or the guitar. Not all of us play specific sports. And so what is incredible about the cerebellum is that as you practice certain movements over and over and over again, the cerebellum will start to coordinate these movements at a subconscious level. And the movements start to feel as though they just happen naturally, and we don't have to think about or worry about contracting our muscles when we walk.
Now you see how okay, so we start off with let's just say understanding a small understanding of how stuff is happening within our body or our day, only because we understand how stuff is working, right? But then when you watch videos like this and get that deeper understanding, it brings about more questions, for me at least, about, damn, who set this up?
You just decide to walk and the cerebellum does the rest. Some of you have practiced a musical instrument and can have a full conversation with somebody while playing that instrument, assuming it's not a wind instrument. But this also can be applied to resistance training, especially for beginners. One of the adaptations that allows someone to lift more weight or even improve in a vertical jump or sprint speed is simply just learning and getting more coordinated with the movements. So as one's cerebellum learns and gets better at coordinating the movement patterns of a squat, a deadlift, or a vertical jump, they will be able to lift more weight and jump higher in the case of the vertical jump. Now, obviously, there are other adaptations that contribute to one's increase in strength, size, speed, and explosive power, like adaptations within the actual skeletal muscles, which we're going to talk about in just a second, and even another nervous system adaptation where the nervous system learns to recruit more motor units and therefore more muscle fibers on demand. And while we're talking about the nervous system coordinating movements and recruiting muscle fibers, I do want to mention that how your nervous system and muscle fibers create action potentials or send these electrical signals that ultimately leads to muscle contractions is through the use of electrolytes like sodium and potassium. So I do want to take a second to say thank you to the sponsor of today's video, Element. Element is a zero sugar electrolyte drink mix
come on.
per hour.
That's what's up.
But let's bring this back full circle, because pretty much everything we have talked about so far is how your muscle memory is developed neurologically, developing and reinforcing those pathways in the cerebellum through repetition. And many of you have likely noticed that if you've taken some time off from a specific motor skill and then you come back to it months later, and in some cases even years later, you don't start from square one. It seems to come back pretty quickly in some cases.
Right.
Like if some of you have taken an extended time away from riding a bike and then you first get on that bike, you might initially feel like, uh-oh, do I even remember how to do this? But then as you start getting going and pedaling, you start to think, oh yeah, I can do this. I remember how to do this. Or maybe you took some time off from a sport, but then you started playing again and you notice that those skills come back relatively quickly. And even with certain aspects of resistance training, part of the speed at which you regain strength can be attributed to reawakening those coordinated cerebellar pathways. But I would also argue that your nervous system has some memory of how to recruit those motor units more effectively, which also contributes to the quicker return of strength.
You ever look at some?
See, that's where we gonna end it at. So, oh, my camera went out. It's gonna come back, y'all. So when we start to learn new things, our cerebellum is the hard drive we are writing to. Oh my gosh, do you know how profound that statement is? That shows a deep understanding for what we learning here on Expansion Pack, Zanita 6'7". Yeah, that's exactly accurate. That's what they said. Right here on the back of your head. That's where you're writing to. And for me, it's the holding of the data. See, we used to wires, hard drives, things like that. Well, this data, sure enough, we have a brain, but this data is being held in a catch that seems to be non-physical. Anyway, learning new skills, that's what we talked about here today on DGTA TV on Expansion Pack. I'm going to go ahead and get up out of here. I got a meeting that I have to attend in a few minutes, so I will see y'all here tomorrow on Find Your Way Wednesday. We always learning and growing, y'all. Find your root so you can grow. And I will talk to y'all later. This is DGTA TV. Peace. Success. Let's see what we got. I always scroll down, and then it'll be the same one by the time I done scroll down so far. It'll be one we already heard. All right, let's go, y'all.
No one understands me. If I actually told people how I'm feeling, they would think of me differently. That is a lie that I told.
The rigors of academic life can be brutal. Long days of classes, long nights of studying, and low cash flow requires you to be frugal. Projects, case studies, pop quizzes, and final exams will test your morals and your scruples. But you keep pushing and pushing, because you know one day, all of that hard work and studying will pay off and be fruitful.
Hey, what's up? Welcome to another episode of Expansion Pack. I'm your host, Dan F. Man. It's good to be in here with y'all again today on Healthy Mental Thursday. We're going to go ahead and jump straight into our motivation, but first, let's get the topic for today. We are clearing mental space. You know how you go through your house, and you be like, I don't need this, I don't need that. Whether you give it to somebody or you throw it in the trash, you got to do that, right? So we're going to do that with our mental space today. All right, let's jump straight into the motivation, and let's get that thing popping. Let's get that thing popping. Motivation for love. Motivation for family. There we go. Here we go.
Everybody gonna be trying to give 100. So you gotta go 120, right? When I tell you, everybody gonna be trying to give 100. So you gotta go 120, right? When I tell you motivation is life. When I tell you that I need you to, next 100 days, I need you to stay plugged in, right? Because the days you're not plugged in are the days you don't get 120. They say an alligator is so ferocious it'll kill a lion. but I can kill an alligator with my bare hands. Little old E.T., how? They say when you want to kill an alligator, you kill it right after it eats.
I think we heard this.
Because right after it eats, it gets satisfied.
Let's do it anyway.
And it goes to a state like it's almost paralyzed. Some of y'all in this room, are you paralyzed? You had a little success? You've done what nobody else in your family has done, and now you chilling? Come on, you ain't hungry no more? Next 100, I need you to stay focused. Why? You should still be hungry. What have you eaten that's got you satisfied? What have you done? What have you accomplished that got you so full? I'm a contender, but the next 100 gonna change my life. It's gonna change this world. We're ordinary people doing extraordinary things. If that's you and you feeling me, just say, I can. Come on, I can. I can. Come on, one time. Yep, I will. Yep, I must. All right, come on. I want to put some context into it. I want to put some context. They sent my mother-in-law home 8 years ago. The cancer metastasized throughout her whole body. They're like, it ain't nothing we can do for you. Go home, spend time with your family. And people was like, yep, that's it for her. She said, it's not it for me. And they said, what do you mean it's not over for you? The doctor said, she said, I don't care nothing about a doctor. I got to see my grandson graduate from high school. He's a junior now at Michigan State University. She said, I got to see my granddaughter graduate, and my only 2 grandkids. I got to see my granddaughter graduate from high school, and she graduates in June. She said, after that, I might die. But up until then, I ain't going nowhere. Are you hearing what I'm telling you?
That's right, Grandma.
And what we said to each other is, I can get through this. I will get through this. I must get through this. So I just need you to think about 3 people in your family that you love. 3 people. 3 people that you love.
Yes, ma'am.
3 people.
Yes, sir.
You got them? They there? You got them? This is what I need you to do for me. Because some of you have a hard time staying motivated for a straight 100 days. So what I need you to do for me is I need you to think about those people every day when you're doing what you're doing. Do you have some days where you just want to hit the snooze button? Raise your hand for me. You want to hit the snooze button, right? So watch this. This is what has to happen. That person that you think about has to be louder than the snooze button. So when you think about Granny, you gotta think about, do I hit the snooze button or do I get up and make it happen for Granny?
Yes, sir.
Are you hearing what I'm saying? Who you doing this for? So the days you don't feel like getting up, just think about them.
Yes, sir.
Somebody tell me in this room, when you think about your siblings, when you think about mom and dad and grandma, when you think about your uncle and aunts, when you think about those coaches, those people who've been there for you, just raise your hand if you say, E.T., sleep is better than that.
Yes, sir.
Just raise your
yes,
hand
sir.
and tell me, anybody in the room, sleep is better than them, E? Raise your hand. Somebody tell me, E.T., you don't get it. You don't know how hard it is, E? I probably don't. I just lived in abandoned buildings, AI trash cans. I probably don't. Maybe I ain't never been through what you've been through, but I've been through my go-through.
Yes, sir.
And you don't get here by quitting when you tired. You get here by quitting when you finish, when you done. You don't stop when you tired. You stop when you done. You stop when you complete it, when you execute it. Execution is worship. And so I execute for my mom. I execute for my grandma. I execute for my sister. I execute for those kids in the hood who looking for a role model. That's why I wear the hat with a PhD. That's why I wear the J's. So when the kids in the hood look at me, they say, if E.T. can do it, I can do it. That's why I can't quit and give up, even though I get tired just like everybody else. Why? Because this is what I do. This is my lane. This is your lane. You gotta murder it. So when I ask you, you got energy, don't play with me. When I say again, you got that energy for the next 100 days, I need to feel your soul in this room. All right, I can? Come on, I can?
I can.
Come on, I can? I will.
I will.
I must.
I must.
Come on, I can? I will. I must. Come on, give yourself some energy. Come on, give yourself some energy.
Yes, sir.
Crap, we wish you the best. We love you. Do you. 100. Let's get it done.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Y'all hear that motivation? All right, let's type this in. Clearing out mental space. Let's see what Jordan Peterson got to say.
So imagine you're dealing with someone who's hoarding. Now, people who are hoarding are often older or neurologically damaged, or they have obsessive compulsive disorder. But then you walk into their house and there's like 10,000 things in their house. There's maybe 100 boxes, and you open up a box, and in the box there's some pens and some old passports and some checks and their collection of silver dollars and some hypodermic needles and some dust and, you know, a dead mouse. And there's boxes and boxes and boxes like that in the house. It's absolute chaos in there. Absolute chaos, not order, chaos. And then you think, is that their house or is that their being? Is that their mind? And the answer is, there's no difference. There's no difference. So, you know, I could say, well, if you want to organize your psyche, you could start by organizing your room. If that would be easier, because maybe you're a more concrete person and you need something concrete to do. So you go clean up under your bed and you make your bed and you organize the papers on your desk and you think, well, just exactly what are you organizing? Are you organizing the objective world, or are you organizing your field of being, like your field of total experience? And Jung believed that, and I think there's a Buddhist doctrine that's sort of nested in there, that at the highest level of psychological integration, there's no difference between you and what you experience. Now you think, well, I can't control everything I experience, but that's no objection because you can't control yourself anyway. So the mere fact that you can't extend control over everything you experience is no argument against the idea that you should still treat that as an extension of yourself. Well, let's say you have a long-standing feud with your brother. Well, is that a psychological problem? Is that him? Is it a problem in the objective world, or is it a problem in your field of being? And it's very useful to think that way, because you might ask, what could you do to improve yourself? Well, let's step one step backwards. The first question might be, why should you even bother improving yourself? And I think the answer to that is something like, so you don't suffer any more stupidly than you have to. And maybe so others don't have to either. It's something like that. You know, like there's a real injunction at the bottom of it. It's not some casual self-help doctrine. It's that if you don't organize yourself properly, you'll pay for it, and in a big way, and so will the people around you. And you could say, well, I don't care about that, but that's actually not true. You actually do care about that, because if you're in pain, you will care about it. And so you do care about it, even if it's just that negative way. It's very rare that you can find someone who's in excruciating pain who would ever say, well, it would be no better if I was out of this. Sort of pain is one of those things that brings the idea that it would be better if it didn't exist along with it. It's incontrovertible. So you get your act together so that there isn't any more stupid pain around you than necessary. Well, so then the question might be, well, how would you go about getting your act together? And the answer to that, and this is a phenomenological idea too, it's something like, look around for something that bothers you and see if you can fix it. You can do this in a room. It's quite fun to do it just when you're sitting in a room, like a room, maybe your bedroom. You can sit there and just sort of meditate on it and think, okay, if I wanted to spend 10 minutes making this room better, what would I have to do? And you have to ask yourself that, right? It's not a command, it's like a genuine question.
Right.
And things will pop out in the room that you know, like there's a stack of papers over there that's kind of bugging you, and you know that maybe little order there would be a good thing, and you know, there's some rubbish behind your computer monitor that you haven't attended to for like 6 months, and the room would be slightly better if it was a little less dusty and the cables weren't all tangled up the same way. And if you allow yourself just to consider the expanse in which you exist at that moment, there'll be all sorts of things that'll pop out in it that you could just fix. And you know, I might say, well, if you were coming to see me for psychotherapy, this easiest thing for us to do first would just be to get you to organize your room. You think, well, is that psychotherapy? And the answer is, well, it depends on how you conceive the limits of your being. And I would say, start where you can start. You know, if something announces itself to you, which is a strange way of thinking about it, as in need of repair, that you could repair, then, hey, fix it. You fix 100 things like that, your life will be a lot different. Now, I often tell people too, fix the things you repeat every day, because people tend to think of those as trivial, right? You get up, you brush your teeth, you have your breakfast, you know, you have your routines that you go through every day. Well, those probably constitute 50% of your life. And people think, well, they're mundane, I don't need to pay attention to them. It's like, no, that's exactly wrong. The things you do every day, those are the most important things you do. Hands down. All you have to do is do the arithmetic. You figure it out right away. So 100 adjustments to your broader domain of being, and there's a lot less rubbish around and a lot fewer traps for you to step into. And so once you've got your mind and your emotions together, and once you're acting that out, then you can extend what you're willing to consider yourself and start fixing up the things that are part of your broader extent. It's a very interesting thing to do. I like the idea of the room because you can do that at the drop of a hat. You know, you go back to where you live and sit down and think, okay, I'm going to make this place better for half an hour. What should I do? And you have to ask, and things will just pop up like mad. And it's partly because your mind is a very strange thing. As soon as you give it a name, a genuine aim, it'll reconfigure the world in keeping with that aim. That's actually how you see to begin with. And so if you set it a task, especially, you have to be genuine about it, which is why you have to bring your thoughts and emotions together, and then you have to get them in your body so you're acting consistently. You have to be genuine about the aim, but once you aim, the world will reconfigure itself around that aim, which is very strange. And it's technically true. You know, the best example of that, you have all seen this video where you watch the basketballs being tossed back and forth between members of the white team versus the black team, and while you're doing that, a gorilla walks up into the middle of the video and you don't see it. It's like, you know, if you thought about that experiment for about 5 years, that would be about the right amount of time to spend thinking about it. Because what it shows you is that you see what you aim at. And that, man, if you can get one thing through your head as a consequence of even being in university, that would be a good one. You see what you aim at. And so, because one inference you might draw from that is, be careful what you aim at, right? What you aim at determines the way the world manifests itself to you. And so if the world is manifesting itself in a very negative way, one thing to ask is, are you aiming at the right thing? Now, you know, I'm not trying to reduce everybody's problems to an improper aim. People get cut off at the knees for all sorts of reasons. You know, they get sick, they have accidents. There's a random element to being, that's for sure. And so you don't want to take anything, even that particular phrase, too far. You want to bind it with the fact that random things do happen to people, but it's still a great thing to ask.
Clean your room. Let's see what else we got.
You know, as someone who wants to taper off caffeine, I'm not doing a very good job. Having an espresso machine right next to my desk is very dangerous and probably a stupid idea. So you know what's pretty crazy? The human brain is pretty crazy. It's such a fascinating machine and we barely have scratched the surface of what it's capable of. But for that very reason, we don't really understand it fully. Like, why is it that some days it seems like our friend, like we're full of confidence, full of energy, witty, sharp as a tack, while other days it feels like our enemy. You know, you feel lethargic, you feel sluggish, feels like someone just poured over a vat of molasses over your brain and it's just slowing down all the gears of your mind. And on these days, it seems to completely sabotage our ability to focus or remember in the short term, or even the long term. Right. Basically, it just screws over our brain completely. This dilapidated state is often referred to as brain fog, and according to the internet, is characterized primarily by a lack of mental clarity, inability to focus, and a decreased function of working memory. But why does this happen, and how can we prevent it? Over the past couple of years, I've been trying to answer this question, because brain fog sucks, especially if you have an important meeting or a date, or you're interacting with people a lot of the time, or you have to solve a problem. A lot of days you can't afford to be in this state of brain fog. You're presenting to the world like the worst possible version of yourself, and it's annoying. So in this video, we're gonna go over 3 powerful strategies to clear up that mental bleh. We're gonna go over 3 reasons why you probably have brain fog and how to fix them. How to fix them. How to fix them. Gotta catch them all.
Commercial. Just that fast.
With Geico Motorcycle Insurance, you have access to specialists who know your bike like you do, so nothing can stop you from riding with confidence. Not even the garage you've been meaning to organize.
Factor number one is overstimulation. I think it was Tim Ferriss who said that we live in a digital environment where attention is currency. All these different companies, all these different websites, these advertisers, they want your attention because they can monetize it. Whenever you click on something, somebody gets paid. Whenever you watch something, somebody gets paid. Even on this channel, I have ads before my videos, unless you have ad blocker and turned it off. If that's the case, that's fine. I'm not picky about it. I'm making like $6 off these videos anyways. Moral of the story is everybody wants your attention. What this means for you is if you spend a lot of time on the internet and around screens, inevitably your attention is going to be completely dispersed in 1,000 different directions. And if you spend a long enough time doing this, you start to get used to having your attention fragmented. YouTube is a perfect example of this. Clickbait on YouTube is so powerful because of something called supernormal stimulus. I'll put a link in the description to my favorite comic on this. There's actually, I mean, I don't read comics too often, but there's actually a really, really good comic on supernormal stimulus, what it is and how you can fix it, or not fix it, it's just a phenomenon. It's a psychological phenomenon. Improvement Pill has a YouTube channel called The Dopamine Fast, or it's about a dopamine fast. It talks about having a single day where you drink nothing but water and you don't intake any information. You can only output information. This is obviously a very extreme example, and if you don't live like a Shaolin monk, you probably have errands to run on a Saturday. Right. You probably don't have time to do nothing all day, like a scheduled day where you do nothing. But it is a really cool concept, and I still think you should check the video out. But what I think is a lot more practical of a solution is to practice meditation. I know I talk about meditation all the time, but it's so powerful in this day and age because people can't sit still with themselves for more than 5 minutes. And it trains you to collect this scattered focus of yours and redirect it into doing something super boring. What's more boring than sitting there by yourself doing nothing? And after you develop this muscle of being able to do that, you can focus on conversations better. You'll be able to focus on a math problem. So reducing social media use, bad screen time, and learning how to meditate, or just focusing on doing something slower paced for an extended period of time, you will train yourself to stop being so scattered, so foggy, so in your head, and really focus in on what's in front of you, and it'll help with your brain fog a lot. So one of the best ways to clear up that brain fog and become more present and focused and dialed in is to prevent being scattered in the first place. Right. Say you have to write a paper and the deadline is 1 month from now. You have some clear days where you could work on your paper, but you say to yourself, oh, it's due a month from now. I can definitely do it 3 weeks before. And then 3 weeks before comes and you're like, I can do it 2 weeks before. Every time you do that, you're not forgetting about this deadline. You're just giving it to your subconscious to worry about. And the more things your subconscious has to worry about, the more scattered you become. Just because it isn't on the front lines of your brain and the thing that you're actively thinking about all the time, you're still thinking about it. Subconsciously, you're worrying about it. And the more things you give to your subconscious to worry about, the worse your brain fog gets. So just get it done so you don't have to worry about it anymore and you can just focus on the task at hand. So tip number one is don't procrastinate. And tip number two is to write down your goals, objectives, and tasks. Say you meet a friend on the street that you haven't seen for a while and you catch up, you have a great conversation, and they say, hey, let's meet up Tuesday afternoon and let's grab lunch. And you say, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. I'll see you then. And then you depart. You depart. I said that archaically. You depart from each other. Write that down. Schedule it in, set a reminder on your phone so that you can forget about it.
Because eventually you will forget about it, but will you have a reminder for it?
Don't give it to your subconscious to have to worry about. You're just gonna be thinking, Tuesday afternoon, I've got a dinner date. Tuesday afternoon, I've got a lunch date with Kevin. And that makes your attention to everything else for that entire week reduced because you're just gonna be thinking about this lunch date with Kevin you have to remember. This is dumb. Every time that you have a task to do, every time you have something scheduled, you agree to something, write it down, set a reminder on your phone so that you can forget about it. It'll free up mental RAM and it'll bring your subconscious soup you have going on. It'll reduce the ingredients of that soup, giving you a nice clear broth that will help your brain operate better.
Wow.
It's so hot in here. I look terrible. Holy. Take it from somebody who has struggled through anxiety his entire life, has pretty much conquered it. Not having things to worry about completely reduces your anxiety. Not completely, I can't diagnose you and say like, oh yeah, if you schedule your day, your anxiety disorder will go away. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that you're doing yourself a lot of favors if you become more organized, you don't procrastinate, and you have less things to worry about in general. So tip number 2 is all about being on top of things.
I built my dream life, but I used AI to help me get there. Try Motion. It's a
Okay, factor number 3 is general health. This one's not gonna be a long one. There's a million videos on how to optimize your health. Going to sleep on time, waking up at a decent hour, getting enough sleep, all that, yada, yada, yada. I have a million videos about sleep. Actually, I probably only have 2, whatever. For most people, that means between 7 and 9 hours of sleep per night, or 7.5 and 8.5 hours of sleep per night. Stay hydrated, eat good food, and exercise. Everybody knows these things, but almost nobody does all of them correctly. So if you feel like you've tried everything to reduce brain fog and you haven't tried to optimize your health, you're doing yourself a huge disservice. And the biggest one of all of these, probably in my experience, is getting exercise. There's a video from a channel called What I've Learned about the cognitive benefits of exercise. In this video, he talks about how whenever someone talks about the benefits of exercise, they talk about reduced heart disease and maybe the ability to, you know, not get a stroke when you're older. It's all, basically, exercise isn't sold very well. Almost nobody talks about the cognitive benefits that you receive from exercise. If exercise was sold in a pill, it would be the best-selling pill ever.
Right.
If exercise was sold in a pill, it would be the closest thing to NZT48 you could possibly find. I've started weightlifting 5 days a week over the past couple of weeks, and I'm gonna continue to do so, mostly because it makes me feel amazing. And I'm not even talking about my bodily energy, I'm talking about my mental energy. I'm on the ball these days. I don't know if you can tell, but I'm just like, I'm sick these days. I attribute a lot of that to exercise. My diet hasn't changed much. I've been eating more protein and I've been staying hydrated, but there's something about exerting yourself every single day. It's almost like your body and mind learn that you're an energetic person and it gives you all this energy for free. It's amazing. So that's about it, guys. If you take all 3 of these factors into account, I guarantee you, unless there's something seriously wrong with you and you need to see a doctor, your brain fog will significantly reduce. You'll become a focused tiger, 10 times more attractive, 5 times more focused, 3 times more productive, and 1 times more yourself, and probably less friends, because they'll all be jealous. Okay guys, before you go, I have relaunched my Patreon. By being my patron, not only do you get to support the channel and help me make better ideas. I mean, yeah, better ideas videos, but you help me make better videos.
Right. Let's go. Let's keep on going with this. All right, so the best decluttering tips. So we don't want to just declutter because it makes it seem like there's just something in our mind that we don't need. Now, you are the determining factor of what you need there and what you don't need. But if you think in terms of how much you can handle as far as processing, like, all right, let me give you an example of processing. So you looking at your phone right now and I'm talking to you. How much are you processing from both? How much are you processing from what you're looking at on your phone? And how much are you processing from what I'm saying to you right now in your head or in your, you know, as we talking? So imagine how much I'm processing while I'm playing the game and watching videos. You see what I'm saying? Like they said in the first video, your attention is your energy. Like where you paying attention at, your aim is what you're gonna get out of life. So pay attention to what you aiming at. But like I said, we don't want to just go in and say clearing out everything, you know, and even sometimes you don't want to just clear out things that make you feel uncomfortable, because some of those things that make you feel uncomfortable are keeping you safe. For instance, you going around into places where you don't feel comfortable may mean that you don't or shouldn't be there. But also in that same light, you get uncomfortable. The basketball player may be uncomfortable after shooting 100 free throws, but that uncomfortable feeling is going to help him in the basketball game when it's on the line and he need to hit some free throws. You know what I'm saying? So let's just not say clearing out mental space. Let's define what it is. Defining mental space. Let's see. There's a
When I
theory
think
of that.
about how I divide my time, it's very carefully. I'm Alex Diaz. I'm a professional marketer.
In this video, I will explain mental space theory. Let's start. 1. Mental space theory is a theory in the field of linguistics and cognitive psychology. 2. This theory is founded by Talmy in 2000.
Now, I don't
3.
like
It
the
suggests that mental space
robot
is
voice.
organized
I
by
don't like the robot voice, but it got good information.
mental operations, and mental operations are organized by mental models. For mental operations are the mental processes that people perform when they think, reason, and communicate. 5. A mental model is the representation of the way something works. 6. Mental models are used to understand, predict, and explain the behavior of people and things. 7. Models are also used to make decisions, reason, and communicate. 8. Mental models are mental representations of the world that people use to make decisions, reasons, and communication.
All y'all did was add a voice to y'all words. There was no life in that presentation at all. You should get... Oh, you only got 600 views. Good. Alright, hold on. Let's see what she's talking about at least.
Hi, I'm Dr. Tracy Marks, a psychiatrist, and I make mental health education videos. It turns out our brains are wired for social interaction, and when we don't get it, the brain changes and you lose nerve connections in certain parts of the brain. Before COVID, this issue was more noticeable in older people who lived alone, cut off from their families, and maybe unable to drive. Researchers saw that the social isolation hastened the age-related cognitive decline and was a risk for developing Alzheimer's disease. But with COVID and the ensuing lockdown, we see the evidence of these brain changes in younger people.
Right.
You may experience it as brain fog. Brain fog can be a
we
lot of
just talking
things,
about that.
but in general, you can think and process information slower. You can have trouble finding words. You can feel mentally tired and draggy even though you haven't done anything that's physically tiring. Why would social isolation do this? Your brain is made up of a network of nerves that connect to one another. The tighter the connections between the nerves, the better they are able to transmit signals from one nerve to another. Inflammation loosens these connections, as does social isolation. Social isolation affects your social cognition. Social cognition is a set of skills that include being able to read someone's emotional expression, remembering and recognizing someone whose face is familiar to you, being able to interpret someone's tone of voice, and being able to empathize with another person and appreciate that they have their own desires, goals, and intentions. This last skill is called theory of mind. Don't know why it's called that, doesn't quite make sense to me, but that's just in case you read that in the articles that I have referenced. These skills are learned very early on, but we need social interaction to maintain them. So some aspect of isolation is that you lose these skills because you fall out of practice. But then there's the brain changes. In one of the studies that I referenced, researchers looked at structural MRI data from 32,000 people. That's a large study.
Right.
The people who were socially isolated showed brain loss in the temporal lobes, frontal lobes, and hippocampus. Your hippocampus is important for emotional memories, among other functions, and I've said before that people who are depressed have smaller hippocampi. Now, if you've watched many of my videos, you probably know that I don't like presenting negative information without a silver lining, and here it is. Even if you have brain loss from pandemic isolation, depression, long COVID, or something else that causes brain damage, your brain has the ability to rewire itself and strengthen loose connections. This ability is called neuroplasticity. So one solution to this problem of social isolation is to build up your cognitive reserve. Cognitive reserve is the mental buffer you have that lets your brain compensate and function even when you have reduced brain volume. It's like having a backup power generator turn on when the power goes out. And this is a real thing and explains why some people can get to their 80s and still be very sharp, while someone else at 68 is having trouble remembering important events. The more robust your cognitive reserve, the better you're able to function when exposed to stressors like isolation, environmental toxins, chronic stress, or anything else that's damaging to the brain. So you can think of cognitive reserve as your brain's physiological resilience. Here are 5 things that can increase your cognitive reserve: education, high levels of social interaction, cognitively challenging jobs, activities that engage your brain like crossword puzzles, reading, learning a new language, and learning to play an instrument. And then regular physical exercise, because exercise stimulates nerve growth, and nerve growth means new pathways and connections. I explain how that works in my video on how exercise changes your brain. Building up your cognitive reserve is something you do over a lifetime. It's not a one and done thing. You have to continuously engage your mind. And education doesn't mean you have to go to Harvard or Oxford if you're in the UK. It's not about the kind of degree you get. It's about a commitment to learning and processing new information. When I was growing up without the internet, the way that you gained knowledge was to go to school or go to the library and look things up in encyclopedias. But now there is so much information available online that you can get a very advanced level of education from researching and reading from trusted online sources. If you want to learn a new language, there's online courses for that. Then there's even free YouTube videos that can teach you a lot about a lot of different things. You just have to stay curious. This list that I just gave you isn't exhaustive. Diet, sleep, and self-care also factor in. But the one thing I like about this list is that most of the factors are within your control. You may not be able to control how challenging your job is. In fact, it may be a mind-numbing struggle for you to get through it every day. But you can compensate for the hit that your brain takes from that kind of job by exercising before you go to work, if you can swing that schedule, or working on mind puzzles during your lunch hour or when you get home. And by the way, don't mistake a stressful job for a mentally challenging one. Too much work with unrealistic deadlines can make your work stressful, but it doesn't mean it's mentally challenging in a positive way. Mentally challenging work should feel satisfying at some level, even if it's hard work. Take a look at this video on what exercise does to your brain. Thanks for watching. See you next time.
All right.
An elevated dining experience? We have
signs that you're breaking down. I want. Nope, don't want that either. Hold on, y'all. Let me see what this is.
Lucas, what is mental space psychology?
Mental space psychology is the new paradigm in psychology, where we see the space around and inside the person as the main primary organizing principle of the mind, which means that all things we think somewhere in this space, but the thing is, this is largely subconscious. And so you could say our knowledge is projected around us in the space around us, and over that we have our perception, and that is what our main thing is in our attention.
You said it is a new paradigm in psychology. In what way?
The existing paradigm is focused on how to get knowledge about the psyche, then partly about studying the brain.
It's not too dense for y'all. I'm just trying to see what they talking about.
So that's the neuroscience part. Then about behavior, and then a lot is studied on what people say. So in fact, their words about what they think and what they write about what they think. But the thoughts themselves are highly elusive.
Yeah, yeah.
So hold on, I want to try something. Hold on. Where are memories stored? Let's see this real quick.
Memory is pretty critical. Without it, we'd never be able to learn, well, anything. We needed to tie our shoes, walk to school, drive a car, study for a test, and even remember the names and faces of our loved ones. It's a complicated process that involves different kinds of memory, several different brain regions, and some complicated biology. Hey there, I'm Allie Astrocyte. It's back to school season, so sharpen your pencils. You're getting ready to stuff your head with all of that new knowledge and try to remember it all. So today, we're going to talk about what memories are made of, how they're formed, and where they're stored.
Yes.
You might think that all memories are created equal, but surprisingly, that's not actually true. First off, memories can be short-term, meaning we only remember them for a few minutes, or long-term, letting us store and retrieve memories over our lifetime. In neuroscience and psychology, scientists split long-term memory into two big categories: declarative or explicit memory, and non-declarative or implicit memory. Declarative memory is how we remember facts and events, while non-declarative memory is responsible for habit formation and skill development, among other things. This isn't just a way of categorizing different kinds of memory. They actually seem to be different biologically. We know this thanks to a man named Henry Molaison, better known as patient HM. After a bicycling accident as a kid, Henry Molaison developed severe, life-disrupting seizures. Doctors tried all kinds of medications and therapies, but none of them worked. So his doctor decided to try a radical surgery that removed the parts of the brain causing Henry's seizures: the hippocampus and part of the amygdala. Now keep in mind, this was the 1960s, and we didn't know very much about the roles of different brain regions yet. So it wasn't until...
Right. Oh my gosh, I can only imagine taking out a piece of his brain.
Henry woke up after the surgery that doctors realized its effects. Henry had severe anterograde amnesia. He could remember his childhood and his life up to a few months before the surgery, but couldn't remember new facts or events. He was unable to form new declarative memories. Surprisingly, though, Henry could form new non-declarative memories. He was able to form new habitual memories, like walking to the hospital dining room, and he could still complete short-term working memory tasks, like repeating back short strings of numbers. The case of HM helped doctors and scientists realize that the hippocampus is critical for helping the brain form and store long-term declarative memories, while other brain systems must be responsible for non-declarative memory. It also showed that not all long-term memories are stored in the hippocampus. This launched decades of research on memory systems that are still ongoing today. Now we know that memories appear to be stored in different places, depending on the kind of memory. For example, our conditioned emotional responses require the amygdala, while our motor memory comes from the cerebellum. And memories of facts and events rely on the medial temporal lobe, thalamus, and hypothalamus. So, we've learned a bit about which brain regions seem to control our access to different kinds of memory. But how are memories actually stored? Since we know that the brain doesn't really grow new neurons, it's pretty unlikely that individual memories are stored in new cells. But as we've discussed before, our brains are super plastic, meaning that neurons can form new connections or strengthen existing synapses with other neurons, and eliminate or weaken old connections. This allows our brains to adapt to handle new information. And most researchers think that memories are probably stored by changing the strength of synapses in the brain. This concept is often summarized as cells that fire together wire together. Basically, if one cell is regularly signaling to another cell and making it fire, the connection between those two neurons will get stronger and make it easier for those cells to communicate. We're pretty positive that a cellular process known as long-term potentiation, called LTP for short, is a critical sort of plasticity for helping us form new memories. LTP looks sort of like this. First, neuron 1 repeatedly sends a signal to neuron 2. This tells neuron 2 to add more receptors to the postsynaptic terminal, which in turn tells neuron 1 to release more neurotransmitters from the presynaptic terminal. Now, with more neurotransmitter being released and more receptors available to pick it up, the connection between the cells is much stronger. The more you use that connection, the stronger the memory. It turns out that there are a bunch of different kinds of LTP, and it happens all across the brain. But it's been most well studied in the hippocampus because of its connection to memory. And some scientists have figured out how to look directly at groups of neurons involved in particular memories. Like a 2016 study at MIT, where scientists were able to tag the neurons in the hippocampus that were activated while mice were learning about a new environment. Later, when the scientists activated just those tagged neurons, they were able to trigger the same behavior.
So, let me stop this and ask this question. How many of y'all really not necessarily know what she talking about, but how many of y'all are like dedicated to taking the time to understand or put into motion the ways to understand this information? Like, as in, have you ever been a part of any case studies, research studies? Have you ever been to college? Have you ever taken the time out to create like a process of gathering information, a science experiment? Because all of what we live in right now is trial and error. And so there's a couple different types of people. Hold on. We just can't be cutting out parts of the brain, right? LTP, I really understood what she said. Yeah, exactly. When you look at it, here you have one group of people who are cutting up pieces of brain, diving in the ocean with sharks and alligators, running around the prairies with lions, videotaping them. And then you have another group of people who are just, I guess, just sitting there gathering their experience, or, using the information from their experience. You go out and you live in too, but there are truly people who are gathering this information that's making us better collectively. Are you part of that team? I mean, we all are in the smallest part or the smallest fraction, whereas the grain of sand is the beach. It ain't just all the sand that's the beach. It's one grain of sand is the beach too, unless you don't find that grain of sand on the beach. But there are really, really people who are gathering this information and putting it into packages for us to be able to understand and teach generations that come after us. Which side you on? Anyway.
Even though the mice weren't in the same environment, they're now
I just answered your question before you asked it. Yep.
Exploring the effects of tagging neurons in different brain regions during memory formation and recall to get a better idea of how all of these different systems work together to encode and store memories over time. So eventually, we might be able to
understand it. I'm so glad you understand it.
Learn exactly where those algebra skills are stored and how to easily boost them. Be able to information and recall to get a tagger, even though the mice weren't in the same environment. They're now exploring the effects of tagging neurons in different brain regions during memory formation and recall to get a better idea of how all of these different systems work together to encode and store memories over time. So eventually, we might be able to learn exactly where those algebra skills are stored and how to easily boost them. In the meantime,
hey, Zanita67, I need that piece of information. Let me go ahead and boost up some of this algebra.
I'm afraid you're just gonna have to remember it on your own. Thanks for watching this episode of Neurotransmissions. If you've enjoyed it, hit that thumbs up button and subscribe to learn more about memories in the brain. If you really love what we do, please consider supporting us on Patreon. We couldn't do all of this without your support. Until our next transmission, I'm Allie Astrocyte. Over and out.
Allie Astrocyte. That's my girl. All right. So let me talk to y'all for a few seconds. I'll put on some quotes and then we get on up out of here for the day. So I don't try to come on here and just drop big words on y'all. Neuroplasticity, neurotransmission, LTP, all of that. I don't try to do that. I'm a regular average guy, as they would say. I'm extraordinary to myself, but to you I may be average. I'm just bringing you the data. Just think of it like going to class every day. I'm just here to present the information, teach it to you. There is no test. The only test is the way that you use it. So, with that being said, some of this information may be just like the AI lady talking to us, the type words on the screen, but take each piece of information to be able to use it somehow to make yourself grow. All right? Let me tell you again now. All right, so we're going to get on up out of here for the day. I'm going to play some quotes real quick. Wise quotes, and then we're going to get on up out of here. Once again, this is another episode of Expansion Pack. I'm your host, Dan F. Man, here on DGTA TV. All right, so let me get some quotes. All I want is quotes. I don't want nothing else.
A big lie about neuropathy you might have heard is that it's caused by diabetes or issues in the peripheral nervous system.
The silence of a wise man is always meaningful. Don't blame others, improve yourself. A wise man never goes back to a place where he has suffered humiliation for no reason.
Yes.
If you make a mistake and do not correct it, this is called the decision.
Yes. Yes, sir.
Don't believe in luck, believe in hard work. Think of success as a ladder. No one has ever climbed a ladder with their hands in their pockets.
Yes, sir. That's my...
Your smile should be bigger than your worries.
I need to hear that again. Why? Hey, listen, we doing a thing here.
Think of success as a ladder. No one has ever climbed a ladder with their hands in their pockets. Your smile should be bigger than your worries. Behavior is always greater than knowledge, because in life there are many situations where knowledge fails, but behavior can still handle. If you focus on the hurt, you will continue to suffer. If you focus on the lesson, you will continue to grow. Time is precious. Spend it with right people. The best use of time is when your good being is reflected in your good doing. When you wish good things for others, good things come back to you. This is the law of nature. If you want to fly, you have to give up everything that weighs you down.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Best advice into lines. Silence is the best answer for all questions. Smiling is the best reaction in all situations. Ego never accepts the truth. Once you carry your own water, you will learn the value of every drop.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Don't mix bad words with your bad mood. You'll have many opportunities to change your mood, but you'll never get the opportunity to replace the words you spoke.
Yes, sir.
The art of being happy is to be satisfied with what you have. Until you change your thinking, you will always recycle your experiences. Understanding is the first step of all solution. Every day is a new chance to take a step towards your dreams. Run away from people who turn off your smile. Solve the problem, or leave the problem. Do not live with the problem. The past shows what you've done. The future will show what you learned.
Yes.
The harder your past was, show what you learned.
The future will show what you learn.
The harder your past was, the more beautiful your future will be. Opportunities don't happen, you create them. In the midst of darkness, light persists. If people treat you like an option, leave them like a choice.
Yes.
A satisfied life is better than a successful life because our success is measured by others. But our satisfaction is measured by our own soul, mind, and heart. Coins always make sound, but paper monies are always silent. So when your value increases, keep yourself silent and humble. Don't trust too much. Don't love too much. Don't hope too much, because that too much can hurt you so much. Not all trees give fruit, but all trees give shadow.
Yes, sir. Yeah. Yeah.
Anything not easy, but everything is possible. Not all storms come to disrupt your life. Some come to clear your path.
Yes, sir.
Teachers open the door, but you must enter by yourself. Life is like a coin. You can spend it any way you wish, but you only spend it once.
Oh my gosh. Hey,
enter by
look,
yourself.
I be bringing y'all the truth here on the bench back. What?
Life is like a coin. You can spend it any way you wish, but you only spend it once. The truth is still the truth, even if no one believes it.
Yes, sir.
A lie is still a lie, even if everyone believes it. Kindness makes you the most beautiful person in the world, no matter what you look like. Simple life is a happy life.
All right, y'all. I'm gonna let y'all listen to this. We're gonna be
I
about
don't
it here
care
today.
what people say about me. I know who I am, and I don't
Colouring
have
the
to
lenses through which we look at the world.
If you want to succeed, choose people who run together with you, not the ones you need to carry. Happy people focus on what they have. Unhappy people focus on what's missing. Don't be afraid of being outnumbered.